Hello and welcome to yet another exciting episode of BM8 Unfiltered. My name is Bucci and I am your host. As we draw closer to the August 13 elections, the question on everyone's mind is, will Brian Munsubile be on the ballot come August 13? And we are here with Honorable Brian Munsubile, and he gets to answer a lot of those questions that you've been putting in the comment section and also sending directly through the WhatsApp number that is currently on the screen. We thank you for the feedback that you've been giving us, and we are very blessed that you've asked all those questions. Let them get answered right away. Honorable, how have you been?
Very well, thank you, Bucci. How have you been?
How's been the last 2 weeks since we've had a conversation with you like this?
Very busy. Of course, we are in an election year, Bucci, so we've been extremely busy. Well, of course, let me start by greeting our people out there. My people, our people in Monze, Mazabuka, Tuliuti, our people in Kalumwange, Kaoma, Luampa, Luchwani, and of course, our people in Solwezi, we are saying to GVAP. People in Mugubudu, Mutilibwanji, the people of Northern Province and other parts of the Luapula, Tulishani, Wonsemkwai.
Well, let's get straight into it. Recently, you met leaders of the We Are One Zambia, which is short for WOZA or WOZA. Yep. And this was just the other day. The question is this an effort again to see you unify the opposition going forward as we approach August?
Yes, Bucci, it's indeed an effort to unify the opposition. There's been a call by the Zambian people to the opposition political parties to come together and unite so that we can create some critical mass with which to enter this year's election and compete favorably with the ruling party. So that was an effort to, continued effort to bring opposition political parties together.
Well, how is that going? Do you think you've answered the call of the Zambians and it's really satisfying the Zambians as from the efforts that you've put together under the Tonse Alliance?
Well, it's work in progress, Bucci. Of course, we've done quite a lot. I've told you before that we are now standing at 16 registered political parties as member organizations of Tonse and 17 civil society organizations. So there are 33 organizations, member organizations in Tonse. So as regards the effort of uniting the opposition, Tonse is doing quite well and will continue. You'll be interested to know, Bucci, many people think this effort to terminate at the time of nomination. These efforts will actually continue beyond the nomination dates. It's also possible for the opposition to unite beyond the nomination dates.
Well, what are you looking at when you're looking at uniting with other opposition political parties? Is it ideas in terms of the manifesto? Are they buying into your manifesto? Are you buying into other people's ideas? What's the core values that you are putting forward to say, okay, this is what we stand by as we are uniting the opposition?
Well, one thing that we are all agreed on is the fact that this country needs renewal. It needs restoration. Restoration insofar as the constitutional order is concerned, democratic environment, protection of human rights, and above all, the fight against poverty, not forgetting the fight against corruption. So as political parties, we have political parties that are like-minded. We are coming together. We may have our manifestos crafted differently, but in substance, when you look at the substance, they will revolve around these pertinent issues. So when we come together, primarily, we are borrowing or learning from each other. We see what they have in their manifesto. We see what we have in our manifesto. Many a time, you're talking about the same things, except that the emphasis may differ. And of course, the methodology, the angle of attack, how you'd want to achieve certain objectives may differ. So these are not, we're not poles apart insofar as wanting to serve the Zambian people is concerned.
Interesting. Now, misinformation during, election periods is usually rife, and you've also fallen victim recently to misinformation, where we saw a malicious AI video circulating, alleging that you've dropped out of the race, and you held a presser on Wednesday, and you strongly addressed this matter. Please tell us more. What really happened?
Well, there's been a lot of discomfort within the UPND camp as regards Tonse Alliance and the candidature of the presidential candidate of Tonse, Honorable Brian Munsubile. A number of statements have been made. Now they've gone to AI statements and all that. Yeah, so we are not surprised. We are not surprised that the UPND government has gone all out to try and attack, misinform the public, create fear in the minds of the Zambian people that their favorite candidate will not be on the ballot. So I felt it was very important that we went to the media to clarify the fact that Honorable Brian Munsubile will be on the ballot. Honorable Brian Munsubile qualifies as a presidential candidate in this year's election. So we had to clarify a number of things just to put our supporters at bay. Buchi, you know that I'm serving my second term as Member of Parliament. If you look at the eligibility criteria of Member of Parliament and President, the differences may be minor. Maybe in one has to be 21 years and above. In the other is 35 years and above. And of course, I'm over 35. So really, to even suggest, or want to suggest that, I will not be eligible to stand is simply a joke. And the Zambian people must understand there was a reason why the drafters of the Constitution felt it was important to put the eligibility of a president, the qualification of a presidential candidate in the Constitution. Can you imagine if it was left in an ordinary or subordinate legislation? By now, the UPND government would have quickly changed that particular act of parliament. But it is in the Constitution. So when you go to the Constitution under Article 100, you'll be very happy to know that I more than qualify to stand as president of this country. So I'll be on the ballot.
And to remove all doubts about your candidature, you went ahead and paid 100,000 nomination fee with the ECZ as candidate in the elections. What does this really signify, this step itself? What does it really signify for you going into this election?
No, well, the step signifies the fact that as a candidate, as a Tonse candidate, I'm very serious about contesting for presidency. So I went to do the first step. The first step was to pay the 100,000 as an expression of interest. So what remains is to go and file in the actual nomination. We'll be given a date on which to file. We are busy preparing our supporters from right across the country, 100 per province. Once the verification has been done and we've been given a date to go and file the nomination, I'll go and file the nominations.
Just to be clear, there is no doubt that you will be on the ballot for the followers that have thought, well, the AI video, that have thought, well, maybe you will be stopped in one way or the other, or maybe there's going to be some unforeseen circumstances that would see Honorable Brian Munsubile not be on the ballot.
There's no doubt at all, Buji. And to my supporters, there's no doubt whatsoever. I qualify to stand as a presidential candidate in this year's election, and I will be on the ballot.
Well, let's talk about this week that is just ending. And it's been a very eventful week where the week ending was dominated by news of President Edgar Lungu's delayed burial. What has been the long-standing position of Honorable Brian Munsubile on this matter?
We continue to mourn. President Edgar Lungu was not only the president of the Republic of Zambia, he was my boss. He was my president. I served under him. I look at the family members today. I look at Madame Esther Lungu. I look at the children. I look at the grandchildren. I'm a parent myself. I know how they feel. I know how the rest of the country feels. Secondly, it's indeed an embarrassment, before the international community that we can come so far and so long and just fail to provide a decent barrier, dignified barrier for our late president. So we are an international embarrassment as a country, as it were. So it is very sad indeed. It continues to send some very sad memories, as it were, to have held the mortal remains of President Lungu for close to a year, and the battles in courts continue. Sometimes you ask yourself a question, Buchi, and say, our colleagues in government, how do they even find peace to go and sleep? How do they find peace? To know that you've held the family of your late brother to ransom. You're holding on to mortal remains. You hold the key to the decision, and you just don't make the decision. You don't care about how they feel. Their lives have been on hold.
What's the decision that should be made in this instance?
Very simple. Abandon all court cases and simply allow the family to conduct the burial rites. Simple. It's as simple as that. Buchi, there's no magic that you require. We have had instances where if the government felt strongly that there was need for a statue or whatever you may call it at Embassy Park, you could actually just create one, and yet the burial happened elsewhere. You could allow the family to bury wherever they want and still be able to mount some statue, some monument somewhere in the name of President Gachagua Lungu. Other jurisdictions have done that before. So there are no hard and fast rules about it. The key is to respect the wishes of the deceased and the wishes of the family. That's where the issue has been. We are Africans, Buchi. We need to have empathy. One day we'll all die. And we have to think about that day to say, when I can no longer speak for myself, when I don't have that authority, what happens to my family? How can my family best be helped? So if the leaders in government today could transpose their positions and put themselves in the position of President Lungu, I believe they can begin to look at this whole thing differently. If they looked at the plight and the suffering and the difficulties the Lungu family has gone through the past 1 year, and just have a bit of empathy, I believe their position on this matter could be different.
There's been this discussion that, look, before he was a family member, our late president, he was a family member, but at the same time, he put himself up for service to this country, and there is need for him to be celebrated as such, a man who served this country. If you were president, how would you go about this same situation to ensure that it is handled with utmost importance and in the quickest way possible? How would you have handled this same situation?
Well, I think what was required is decency in the way and the manner that decisions were made. Buchi, the circumstances surrounding the late president are well known to all Zambians. We all knew what he went through. First of all, he was not even allowed to go for medical treatment. We saw how the president suffered at the hand of his political opponents in government today. So really, now that he died, he had traveled as a private citizen. We have pictures of how he traveled, and he was there as a private citizen. It was only proper that the family should have been allowed to bury their beloved father, their beloved uncle, their beloved grandfather in the manner that they wanted. The state could have done their part on the side, but the family should have been allowed. That would have been a most befitting decision to make under the circumstances. Had it been the other way around, where the government had been looking after him, they did everything, maybe their insistence, was going to be consistent with their earlier actions. But in this particular case, not that that was the position at law. It was just going to be a moral right that the family allows the government to do everything else.
Do you think it should be set in stone in form of a law in terms of how the remains of a former or sitting president, should they pass, be handled so that in the future we don't have an impasse of this nature?
Well, the President Lungu, I think, was is he the 5th or 6th president to die? Yeah. So it's only happening now. So we should not generalize it. There have been cases with the current laws and policies where burial has been conducted properly because of the leadership that existed then. So you don't want to start bending the law, to justify certain actions by government, as it were. So the lessons to learn really is that you have to be human. In whatever we do, let us be human. And let's treat each other with civility. Those are the lessons to learn. So don't try and change the law to suit these circumstances. So if President Lungu was treated properly by those in government, these difficulties would not have arisen. President Lungu himself would not have told the family to stop government officials from attending his funeral. If he felt well looked after, he was not going to utter those words, and these problems were not going to be there. So the first thing to learn, this is a Christian nation. Remember, this is a Christian nation. And when you follow Christian values, okay, we're supposed to love one another. Let love lead. If there was love between our two leaders, this would not have arisen. We have challenges now because there was no love. There was persecution, for instance. There was victimization. There was lack of respect, lack of dignity. So when you look at our national values in the Constitution and you apply them strictly to many of our situations, we will not be in the position that we're in today.
It's another week, and President Hakainde Hichilema is again back on the Copperbelt on a working visit. It appears that this region is receiving a lot of focus, the Copperbelt and surrounding areas in recent months. What is the Tonse's message on the Copperbelt going forward, especially with reference to the newly launched Manifesto?
Yes, Buchi, what we say in Bemba, if you look at the many times the president has visited the Copperbelt, in Bemba you'd sum it up by saying, President Vasensela Iliokawa.
What does it mean?
In Nyanja, since you come from Eastern Province, Vakambalet. You see, the president has just realized that he hasn't done much for the Copperbelt. He has realized that he has not done much for the Copperbelt. There was a lot of talk regarding the revival of mines, job creations on the Copperbelt and so on, but he has come now to realize that he hasn't done much on the Copperbelt. So he believes these last-minute trips could try and improve his image on the Copperbelt. But like I said, he has reacted too late. That's what Vasensela Iliokawa really means. When you look at the Copperbelt, first of all, you are looking at the mines, the mine sector. You're also looking at the support systems to the mines, the companies that you'd see in Ndola, Kalulusha, all these other places. The question to ask is that with the level of investment that is reported in the newspapers every other day in billions of dollars, what has been the impact on an average Zambian? Why should there be so much unemployment on the Copperbelt? The youth unemployment is highest on the Copperbelt. If indeed these investments 5 years later are yielding fruit, why do we have poverty levels so high on the Copperbelt, high unemployment levels, as it were? Even those that are working are now referred to as the working poor. There's no middle class to talk about on the Copperbelt. And yet, you have reports of the level of investment on the Copperbelt. So there's some detachment. There may be good policies that the EPND have come up with to favor investments on the Copperbelt. But those policies did not have the Zambians in mind. They did not have Nakulumutinta Nemisepela in mind. So the mine owners have succeeded. They have succeeded. Investments are huge. They're raking the profits, as it were. But there were not deliberate policies that would, permit Zambians to benefit from whatever policies these were. So when you ask me, our starting point, like I said to you earlier, under Tonse, the Tonse Manifesto talks about moving women and youths from the margins of policy transformation to the center. So whatever policies, whether in the mining sector or any other sectors, had to take into account na kulumutinta nemisepela. You find youths in Chingola, you find youths in Solwezi, in Mufumbwe, Kikonge, and all these places in Kitwe. I go there and I interact with them. They are crying, literally crying, to say, we've been duped. We were surviving informally somehow from Black Mountain or whatever dumps that they were mining from. What they were hoping would happen at the time, but you always have to go back to history. President Hakainde Hichilema signed a social contract with those youths, I think you remember, where he said they would no longer be Jerabos, there would be small-scale miners. He promised to get them equipment. He promised to give them licenses so that they could mine properly. That has not happened. This is 5 years later. Those are the same youths that you were signing agreements with at Community House. So the youths are still in the same position. Many of them have actually died because of lack of safety in the mining activities. So what we need on the Copperbelt, we need to create employment. Employment through industrialization. We have said it many a time on this platform that we will only create jobs through industrialization. And this will be industrialization through mining value chains. You just don't shower the investors with incentives, okay? You come up with deliberate policies where there'll be some value addition. You create value chains which can create employment. You also come up with policies and sometimes even enact laws that will guarantee some businesses to the Zambians in the mining sector. You go further in attending to the working poor. Some of the people that are working in the mines, Buchi, they're working quite all right, but they're very poor even as they're working. You come up with policies like sectoral minimum wages. Okay, you prescribe minimum wages per sector. This will protect drivers and all other workers, including miners working in these mines across the sectors, because then you'd have set minimum wages for that particular sector. So there has to be deliberate efforts to protect those that are working, and deliberate policies to industrialize and create new jobs for the youth. In the cases of informal mining, there has to be steps to formalize the small-scale mining. You have to formalize self-employment. So these are the measures that we have in our manifesto. There's a lot that needs to be done on the Copperbelt.
Well, still on the Copperbelt, and with regards mining, and when you say the mining sector value chain, under the Tonse, what does the value chain look like from getting the minerals on the ground? To what extent are you looking at this value chain, extending this value chain? Because as it stands, many governments have come and gone. We're talking about 64 years. And the only time when we said Zambia had majority ownership of these mines was maybe under Kaunda. And after that was privatization. So when you say there's going to be a value chain, how are you looking at coming up with this value chain and ensuring that the benefits still come back to the ordinary Zambian that you mentioned, the Nakulumutinta and Imisepela?
For instance, you've got companies like Zamefa. Zamefa gets its raw materials from the mines, the copper, and produces wires, high-quality wires that are exported in the world over. You would want to increase and expand industries such as these for employment creation, as it were. Not very long ago, the president had talked about battery factories, manufacturing batteries for electric motor vehicles. So the raw material are the same minerals that we're mining. So the idea really there is that as opposed to promoting and encouraging export of raw materials, we are exporting jobs. Why don't we just do the basics and set up certain factories that would absorb even up to 20% of what is being produced? That's enough industrialization. If you say that we get 20% of the minerals that are produced, you're talking about 20% of copper, 20% of cobalt, 20% of lithium, and many others. and encourage value addition, you would have created so many jobs. And remember, Buchi, that you've got IDC, okay? IDC that is the holding company for government, parastatals. So most of the industrialization that we're talking about will actually come through the Industrial Development Corporation. That was the intention of creating IDC. In areas where the private sector cannot easily be attracted, IDC comes in and invests in those particular sectors. Remember, the objective is to create employment through industrialization. So as regards value chains, there are many other value chains, that you can create within the mining sector. I've just given you an example of two: wires in that particular case, batteries in that particular case. There are many other components, electronic components, that are being manufactured from the minerals that we are making. So, as a government, we've got to encourage companies to come and invest in factories right here, so they benefit from the mineral resource that is coming from there for value addition, thereby creating employment.
May 1st is Labor Day, and the theme is securing Zambia's future of work, protecting jobs, skills, and pensions for decent work for all. What do you make of this theme? And you've already spoken about job creation. So what does this theme really do in terms of tying into that?
It's a very good theme and very timely. I want to believe it may have been picked from the Tonse Manifesto. Nothing wrong, nothing. We're there to provide alternative policy, as it were. Yes, you see, we can't fight poverty, without creating employment. By the way, employment creation is a primary metric of economic success. So the primary metric of economic success is job creation. Okay? How many jobs you create will attest to your economic successes, as it were. Yeah, so the theme is very good. It talks about securing Zambia's future of work, protecting jobs, skills, pensions for decent work. This is exactly what the Tonse Manifesto is all about. Yeah, so this said, we have to realize one thing, that the Zambian worker needs relief. Zambian worker is overtaxed. Today, Buchi, you have the working poor. You've got workers that are heavily in debt. They're actually just surviving by the day. There's no dignity in their lives, as it were. So when you look at these workers, they need tax relief. They need wage growth. They need formal self-employment. Small-scale farmers, small-scale miners.
Are these things that you have in the manifesto?
These
are things that you're targeting?
These are things that we are targeting. We are talking about expanding opportunities through industrialization, like we talked about earlier. We are talking about SME growth as some of the solutions to the many challenges that the workers are facing. It's a very important point that I make, Buchi. Because of low employment numbers, government is overtaxing the few that are employed. So what are the solutions? The solutions are expanding the opportunities through industrialization. So meaning that the few that are overtaxed, you are going to have so many that are employed, both in public service and in the private sector. So when you expand, when you enlarge the employment numbers, there will be some relief on the heavily taxed workers, as it were. And at the same time, there's got to be some wage growth. Workers need to be paid living wages so that they're not the working poor. They go to work. At the end of the month, they can't afford to pay rent, school fees from their salaries. What do you think they'll do next? This is why many of our workers get tempted to be involved in other vices, as it were. So it's very, very important to make assessments and relate to the lived realities, how the employees are surviving, how the civil servants are surviving.
Well, to the defense of the UPND, one can say, well, they've created thousands of jobs in the public sector. When we talk about nurses, we're talking about employment of teachers. Recently, there was recruitment of police officers. And what do you make of this? First of all, what do you make of these recruitments into the public service? Does this answer partly the question of creating jobs while in office for the UPND?
Well, job creation in the public service has limits. There's limited space. There are limited numbers that you can absorb in public service. So now really when you talk about job creation, we are talking about the private sector. So job creation in the private sector can actually be exponential depending on the policies that government comes up with to promote private investments, to promote industrialization, as it were. There's nothing wrong with government having created jobs in the public service. They boast of, is it 30,000 there, the 11,000, and so on and so forth. But what saddens many of us that interact with the public workers, I know of many young doctors today who graduated, having going through a 7-year training at the university, another 7 years they've been out of employment. What is even more saddening, Buchi, is that many of these may have even been volunteering for over 2-3 years. Not a single allowance. What is even worse, a person who's been volunteering maybe for the past 3 years remains unemployed. Others come in, they volunteer for 1 month and they're absorbed. This is what is happening in the civil service. There are a number of our professionals, our doctors, who are going through these frustrations.
What do you think causes that?
What causes this is the public service is highly politicized. The civil service is unprofessional. The recruitment process is not merit-based. So the solutions is just the opposite. When you have a merit-based approach to recruitment, you will not have situations such as these. When you depoliticize the civil service, including the recruitment process, you will not have a situation like that.
How is Honorable Brian Munsubile going to ensure that this does not happen under his watch?
Well, we've made a commitment, and our commitment in the manifesto is that, one, we are going to implement reforms in the civil service. Number one will be to depoliticize it, because in Tonse, we do not only want to change government, but we also want to change how government works. And to be able to change how government works will be to protect the state, so the state remains neutral at all times. So number one is depoliticization. Number two is to ensure that we have a professional civil service. And number three is to implement a merit-based approach in recruitment. When you have professionals in these positions and you allow the service commissions to do their work and employ on merit, we will achieve that particular objective. Meaning that first in, first out. Those that came in first to start volunteering should be given a chance to get the first chance to recruit. So the ideas of these databases, which nobody knows, these obscure databases will not be there. You don't need those obscure databases. You need a very transparent process. Government systems must be allowed to run. You see, what has happened, Buchi, is that those that have been politicizing the civil service, allowing people that didn't qualify for certain positions to get those positions, have in the end been affected. You've just talked about the president running in and out of the Copperbelt, realizing that he has underperformed, and realizing that the people of the Copperbelt, I can say this confidently, will not give President Hakainde Hichilema a vote, because he has failed. He has failed to perform in that particular sector. He has equally failed to perform in the civil service. The challenges we're highlighting now are the challenges the civil service is facing. Now, when you don't employ a merit-based recruitment approach, you actually begin to fail to implement certain services in government. Because one, You have kept away those that qualify, those that are able to implement government policy. You can have good policies in your manifesto, but the people to implement, the people to interpret should be qualified to do so. So why there's been failure in the UPND government, it has started with the human resource. The people that are experienced, the people with institutional memory, Buchi, you go to cabinet office, you're going to find my brothers and sisters, over 400 of them. They've just been reporting for work, others just sit at home for the past 5 years.
I want to ask you one question, one simple question. If and when you become president, come August 13, and Honorable Brian Munsubile is now referred to it as His Excellency, how would you reward loyalty of people that have, been by your side during these trials, and you've been going through all these things? How would you plan to reward people's loyalty? Because again, this is something that constantly comes up when someone assumes office. There's this assumption that he needs to employ people that stood by him. So how are you going to reward loyalty when you're in government?
See, there are many ways. There are many ways that you can reward those that worked with you. You don't call people that are not qualified and employ them in the civil service just because they were loyal to you and you expect them to perform. Even to my supporters, I've said, look, people be rewarded according to their capacity. Okay? Those that are qualified. First of all, in the civil service, there's no gatherism. Okay? To be depoliticized. Remember, there are people who have chosen to be politicians. Those who run with them in politics, they're politicians. There are those who have chosen to be technocrats, to be professionals. They should be promoted in that area. You don't change the two. Those that are in politics will remain in politics. They'll be empowered and helped through that route. But as regards the civil service, even to my supporters, as regards the civil service, we are going to depoliticize the civil service. We are going to employ a merit-based recruitment approach. You've got to qualify for this particular job to get it. Yeah. So if you look at our supporters are many. Okay? There are those that support us in politics. Okay? I'm going to run with them in politics to make sure that, one, the Tonse Alliance remains alive, and we're able to remain vibrant in the political field and be able to assist them from the many empowerment programs that will be introduced, because they're Zambians. All right? At the same time, we've got technocrats, for instance, the ones that we sit with and come up with manifestos, craft these policies with. Those are not politicians, remember? These are technocrats. So those will be assisted in their arena because they qualify for those positions.
Well, let's get some more of what is happening in Zambia. Some sections of the labor market feel that the process of obtaining employment permits for foreigners doing jobs that Zambians can do is very porous. When you come into office, how do you plan to protect the ordinary Zambian? Because we are not only getting investments from outside, but it seems like we're also importing jobs.
Yes, of course. It's the same thing, Buchi. The civil service is politicized, it's unprofessional. And the people that are recruited to do most of these jobs in the civil service are not qualified. But I want to tell you that if you look at the Department of Immigration, this is one area where you find high levels of corruption. Today, you've got ministers' children who've set up companies. They're calling themselves consultants, okay? Labor consultants or whatever, permit consultants. So what happens ordinarily, there's a very, very ugly system that President Daga Hichilema cannot claim to know at immigration. Many of genuine investors that have come into the country have complained about this particular vice. So what happens is that no more applications for qualifying workers coming in with these foreign investors are actually rejected. They are rejected and ministry at immigration. So the design there is that once they reject, you are now advised on the side to go and appeal through some consultant. Now, some of these are direct relatives to ministers in these particular areas. As long as the application goes through there, that particular application will go through. They are charging these foreign investors as much as $10 to $20,000 per permit. This SEC cannot claim not to know about it. It's happening broad daylight. So most of the senior employees at immigration and at Home Affairs have got these small companies where they are milking money from foreign investors. They are paying between $10,000 and $20,000 for these permits. These are known individuals. They will tell you so-and-so's son runs the consultants. If you appeal through there, they've even got law firms that they are using. Law firms that they are using to perpetuate these vices. So imagine the impression that you're setting to the country. These are people who are coming in to invest. And the first thing they do, they hit hurdles very early in their processes. They can't even bring in their technical staff to come and assist, train Zambians in certain skills. They begin to fork out money through corruption. What message goes out there? These people actually know that this corruption is perpetuated by sitting ministers using their children and other family members. And everybody knows these stories. The SEC would like to ignore this and go all over victimizing innocent people. And millions of dollars are being milked from our investors through these channels.
What's the answer to that?
A genuine fight against corruption.
What does a genuine fight against corruption look like under Honorable Brian Munsubile?
Number one, you don't place the Anti-Corruption Commission under State House. The Anti-Corruption Commission must be independent. The appointment of the chairperson of the commission and the appointment of the DG must be separated, and it should not be done by the president. The reports from the Anti-Corruption Commission should be taken to Parliament on the same day that the president is given that report. And the Anti-Corruption Commission should appear before a parliamentary committee. You will see how this fight against corruption will move. Today, the DG of the SEC is unable to move. She's sitting with over 10 names of ministers, sitting ministers, who've been charged with, slapped with corruption charges. Very serious charges at that. So she's unable to move. She has to write a letter to the Minister of Home Affairs seeking for permission. Now imagine if the Minister of Home Affairs is on that particular list. What response do you expect? It's a circus. This is very serious. I want you to see the circus that is happening in the fight against corruption. They're unable to move. Because if the president says, wait, that's my nephew. The one they say has been getting money through consent orders is my nephew. I'll tell you when to move. And then the people who are watching realize, this president actually tolerates corruption. And the cancer grows. That's where we are today. So there has to be a genuine fight against corruption. One, the reporting channels must change. Number two, the appointment of the key staff must change. So we're going to implement reforms at the Anti-Corruption Commission to ensure that the commission is effective and efficient in its operations.
So those reforms, I just want to put a scenario to you. You're president,
yes,
and a member of parliament who you appointed to be minister of so and so department is found to have been corrupt.
Yeah.
How can you guarantee the Zambians that you will not in any way interfere in the workings of the ACC, or you will not protect in any way any member who is loyal to you?
Well, I've told my colleagues that our fight against corruption will be very transparent. So remember, the president will not receive the report alone. The time he receives the report from the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Parliament is also receiving a report. That's the transparency. As president, I've got my report, and I've been told that Butch is involved in that corruption. Even Parliament, the parliamentary committee, he's also received the same report. They will begin to interrogate that particular report. Even if I wanted to help you, Butch, I can't. My hands are tied because it's out there. It's in Parliament. The parliamentary committee is scrutinizing that report, and Butchie, who's very close to the president, has been named. So at that point, my brother, I'm saying to you, I warned you that our fight against corruption is going to be transparent. So you've got to face the law like any other citizen. And that is the undertaking that we make.
Let's go back to the civil service. Most of the civil servants have borrowed heavily, and their payslip can't really sustain some of the loans, and they're crying, asking for a debt swap, which the PF had initially initiated, but was stopped by the UPND upon assuming power. What is your position on debt swap, and how do you intend to sort of soften the blow of these loans on the civil service?
Which were very clear, as Tonse said, that we will bring back the debt swap. We'll implement it right from the beginning. This is in order to give relief to the overburdened civil servant. We understand the background that led to this indebtedness on the part of civil servants. We are also aware that there has not been salary and wage increases that are significant enough to cover most of our workers. So most of our workers, civil servants, have resorted to borrowing, as it were. Most of our civil servants have had their wages stagnated over a period of time. What is important, Buchi, excuse me, is that there is a saying in my early years of training. What do they say? They say, look, you never kill the goose that lays the golden egg. At any given time, as an employer, you've got to take time to understand the welfare of your employees and what they're going through. Yeah, because there has to be motivation in your workers for them to discharge their functions fully. Right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Look, before you even get to begin to point fingers, okay, why did you borrow so much? Why? Before that, the fact is that your workers are highly indebted and their pay slips are negative. But you expect the same workers to come and implement CDF. They should come and implement many policies within the government. It's impossible. You are actually positioning them for corruption because they've got to survive. Whether or not they were responsible in contracting those dates, you are saying to them, can we have a new beginning? Can we have a new beginning? All right, let's understand what happened. Okay, government owes you money through unpaid allowances, but you also borrowed money elsewhere. So government will start by discharging its responsibility. We will pay you, all the arrears, whether it's leave days, allowances, and so on. Here is your money. We expect you to now put your life in order.
Well, the other question that arises from the debt swap is that this has an effect on government coffers, which, again, we've mentioned earlier, you mentioned rather, that government is not making much money, and there is need for government to make money. So how do you balance the two, where you're going to have a debt swap and still have money to do implement other developmental projects for the country?
Well, Bushi, when you say government has no money, I don't know what you mean. I'll give you an example. The average budget, yearly budget under the UPND has been 250 billion kwacha. Okay? And the only thing we can see visibly the only projects we can see being implemented are CDF projects. Now, CDF is only 6 billion per year from 250. Honestly speaking, from 240 billion kwacha, we can't fail to implement debt swap. There's still enough money. Well, there's a lot of wastage.
The UPND will argue that some of that money has to go to
where?
To paying off Zambia's debt.
Hey, come off that. We celebrated together, Buchi, debt restructuring and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I believe that there's still a lot of money that can be employed in implementing the debt swap. Look, Buchi, we are not limited in our minds, in our ways and means. We are not limited as Tonse. We've told you, for instance, that there will be reforms to improve receipts from the mines, where the investors will win, but the Zambians will also win. If you look at the net effect, the actual benefit we're getting from the mining sector is quite small, as it were. All right? So we're not going to improve, we're not going to focus on increasing taxation We are also going to focus on greenfield projects in the mining sector, as it were. We are going to improve the performance of companies under IDC, as it were. So clearly, when you look at the economy in general, and you look at what is required to implement debt swap, and you look at the leakages, the leakages in terms of illicit financial flows, then you say, wait a minute, why are we being so funky? Because there's $10 billion which has left this country through illicit financial flows. And on the other hand, you've got workers who are suffering. How do you reconcile the two? You can't plead that there's no money to pay them. This is the same economy which has lost $10 billion over the past 5 years in illicit financial flows, as reported by the FIC. So when you begin to realign and seal most of these leakages, there certainly is going to be enough money to implement the debt swap.
Well, back to the manifesto, which you launched a few weeks ago. I know there's obviously interest from the public to read the manifesto, to understand what you bring to the table. How do people get access to this document? Just indulge us for a bit.
Yes, we've got soft copies on our Tonse online platforms where they can actually access these. We are printing more hard copies. Those that are able to come to the Tonse Secretariat can access the hard copies. So we have two versions. You know, there is one pocket size manifesto, which one can walk around with. I think it's A6, and of course the A4. We are encouraging as many people as possible to take time and look at this manifesto. We also accept criticism. You know, where we think we can improve and get some feedback from the people, we are very open to that. We're not immune to criticism.
Well, let's talk about the manifesto itself. If you may, run me through the manifesto again. Does the manifesto explicitly say how many jobs it is going to create and how it is going to create these jobs under the Tonse Alliance administration?
Well, there are different sectors. For instance, in the agricultural sector, like I said earlier, we are targeting over 300,000 jobs. Okay, this is just based on the farm block model and the agro-industrial processing parks, projecting between 25 to 30,000 jobs per farming block. So that's about 300,000 jobs. In the areas of creative arts, we are projecting about 95,000 jobs. That is the same as the area of digital economy, around 95,000 jobs. In the mining sector, I may not recall what the numbers are. And these are numbers that are based on research. Okay, models that can work for us. They're not coming from nowhere. Our technocrats sat and did a number of simulations. And we realized that in a very short space of time, we can create employment and begin to fight poverty, especially in our rural areas.
What's a very short space of time for Honorable Brian Munsubile? Because the question they'll ask is when you're outside of government and you come into government, as was the case for the UPND, they say that, well, there's a lot of indebtedness, there's a lot of problems that the PF left, and because of those problems, now they're faced with a number of challenges as they operate.
Now, what I want to say on this platform is that when you vote for me at 10 hours, and at 14 hours I will have 200,000 jobs. I will not say that. I will be very practical, all right? Yeah, so in the first year, of course, there are certain jobs like in the areas of creative arts and the digital economy. These are easy. In the agricultural sector, it will be progressive. Remember, you are getting to 30,000 at the time that the farming block is fully fledged, meaning that you've gotten into value addition. So the numbers will be increasing progressively. So the model in the farming block to start with, I'm very passionate about that. Why? Because in Bemba we say, Imbwa bayumi na noko kwete kuminwe. This is one sector where even Nakulumutinta can participate. So the model in the farming block is such that we have an average of 100,000 hectares, by the way. That's the minimum size. In Northern Province, I think we have 200,000 hectares at Kalunguish farming block, as it were. So the starting point really, this model revolves around an aggregator, a big brother. Okay, so you've got an anchor farmer, maybe picking up to 50,000 hectares or less. Okay, so this anchor farmer will promote an outgrower scheme, taking on small-scale farmers and helping them with equipment, helping them with finance and technical services. So if they are growing wheat, he is growing wheat, they're also growing wheat, and they supply to him. So the market is there. He's doing what you call forward and backward integration. He's helping them start and sort out all the challenges, quality issues, equipment, and everything, mechanization, and they supply to him. All right? So you are creating employment, first of all, with the anchor farmer. You're also creating employment through the outgrower scheme, because even they will have workers that they will employ. Then along the way, these farming blocks will start migrating towards value addition, setting up factories within the farming block to process the farm produce into finished products. At full maturity, they will be able to absorb that number. This is based on research data.
Well, Honorable Brian Munsubile, we could talk on and on, but this BM8 Unfiltered platform is always on Thursday, and I get to sit down with him, ask him a number of questions, and week by week we will interrogate the manifesto which has been put forward by the Tonse Alliance, and we will investigate and ask all the questions necessary to assure us and also give us confidence that should Honorable Brian Munsubile be voted into office, he will put into practice exactly what is in his manifesto. My name is Buchi, and I've been here with Honorable Brian Munsubile, who is the Tonse Alliance president and as well as candidate for the 2026 general elections come August 13. That's where we wrap the show today. But until next time, on another Thursday, keep it locked right here.